right. Can everybody hear me all right? Somebody would just put a comment in there. Let me know if you can hear me. All right. Thanks, William. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Just want to go over kind of the main things here. I will say I am in my home office, and this is live. So, I have a dog. There may be a delivery at the door or something, and my dog may start barking. So if I disappear for a minute, it's because I'm going to take care of that. Otherwise, the dog's just going to keep barking. And then there's also some people doing yard work next door. So I apologize if there's some background noise as far as that goes, but we'll definitely make it through here. So one thing I want to do here is I'm going to go up to about 20 minutes back. So I'm going to start with John V's question. So if you posted a question more than 20 minutes ago, it looks like William F is the next one. If you would, if you're still in here, I just want to make sure I'm answering questions for those who are still in here. So if you're still in here, just go in and repost your question, and it'll show up on the queue. So let's go ahead and get started here. One other thing I want to mention is email notifications. We had an issue with it yesterday. There were some people that got the notifications way later. We do apologize for that. There was some sort of issue with our email. I'm not sure if that's been resolved yet, but we're definitely working on getting that so you're getting the notifications at the right time. So if you got the notification later and you missed the office hours yesterday, we do apologize for that, but hopefully we'll get it worked out soon. That way you're getting it at the right time. So John V says he is 66 years old and he's worked with the PGA Pro. No matter what we work on, lag, turning the wrist, finish, etc., I can't get mile per hour club head speed on my 7-iron much above 63 US track around. Any ideas what is going on? So, I mean, what I can tell you is the main things that help you increase club head speed. So, the number one thing that we have found is shoulder turn. So getting a big shoulder turn is the number one thing. So that's usually where we see the biggest jumps in club head speed is when you work on shoulder turn. So if you go to, it's actually the first video of the power turn section, and all that is with that drill. Let me go ahead and grab a club here. So with that, all you're doing is you're taking a club and you're putting it across your shoulders, and you're just turning to try to get that butt end of the club to point as far behind the golf ball as possible. And then once you get comfortable with that, get some reps in with that, turning as much as you can, and making sure that you're loosening up your hips, maybe even getting that left heel off the ground a little bit, if you're that lead heel, if you're right-handed, even turning that trail foot out a little bit. So to kind of show you what that would mean. Okay. So if I'm setting up to the ball here and I'm trying to get a big turn, well, if you have a limited rotation in your hip here, your internal rotation, you're not going to be able to turn as much as you want to. So just angling this out a little bit can help you to ease up that internal rotation and help you turn a little bit more. And the other thing is just lifting up this left heel. So loosening up this left heel to allow it to come off the ground. So you look at a lot of great players. Bubba Watson right now does this. There's a lot of players on tour that are lifting up that left heel. Don't be afraid to do that. It's not going to make you less consistent or anything like that. But yeah, definitely look at the shoulder turn. So 1.1, video 1.1 from the power turn. Start working through that, and then just start working through the entire power turn section. That's really where you see the most results in club head speed. But obviously, there's lag as well, getting a nice full finish. That's part of the power turn section, is getting a nice full finish. So I would definitely be working through that stuff. All right, Steve G says, I'm 62 and have a physical condition that reduces my flexibility on my backswing. I can take the club back with a 90-degree shoulder turn, but my arms can't get above my shoulders. I have trouble developing enough lag as I'm his arms are too far down in the move to allow for the angles to be held before I had to start the release of the club. Any thoughts? So, I mean, if you have physical limitations, that's something like if you do the test, which is what we call the lat test, which is essentially where you sit with your back up against the wall. So if I were to, I can't really do that in here, but basically you'd have your back up against the wall, and then you would go with your arms straight back to see if you can get your thumbs to touch the wall. So I'd imagine it sounds like you may have an issue where you can't get your arms to go all the way back. So that's not going to make really any difference in being able to generate lag or the move. It's actually going to make the move easier because the club and everything's or the arms and everything are already going to be shallowed out because you're going to have to swing flat if you're in that case. But as far as getting the arms up higher and more vertical to generate speed, it is going to be more difficult for you. So what I'd recommend doing is going to see some sort of medical professional, maybe a chiropractor can help you with that to help you get, unless it's some other, I'm not sure the details of the flexibility issue. But if you want to be able to get your arms higher, I'd recommend going to see a medical professional for that, or maybe a physical therapist or something like that. But as far as lag is concerned, lag, like if you're swinging faster, it's actually going to make, because lag is all really, it's just the shallowing of the club. So if you think about lag, if I have this club straight up and down right here, and if I put it like that, that's about as much as I can bend it back. So that's about 20 degrees. And then if I go like that, now look how tight that angle looks. Well, it looks a lot different. And that's because I've shallowed out the club. Whereas if you're straight up and down, now that I don't have the appearance of all that lag, right? So that's what creates that sharp angle of lag, is that shallowing of the club. So if you're coming back flat, well, this club is already more or less shallowed out, and it's not, it's going to be easier to actually get the appearance of lag. It's also going to be easier to perform the move because it's already shallowed out. From here, all you have to do is turn that wrist down as you're coming down to square up the face, and then turn into the ball. So that would be my recommendation there. All right. Leo Nicholas says 1/2 T. I think he may have pressed enter on accident and didn't get his whole question in there. So I'll move on to Alan B here. He says, I'm now getting to initiate the downswing with the hips, but I can seem to prevent the hips from stopping when I get to square to the ball, thereby letting the shoulders and arms take over and having to stand out of posture to create the room. Any magic tip to help the hips to continue to move through the swing? So I think he meant he can't seem to prevent the hips from stopping. That the most common thing I see with that is just kind of what I was talking about, is when you're steep. So I would check and see if that shaft is steep in the downswing. So the way to do that is film from down the line. Make sure you're filming right down your toe line here. And in the downswing, pause it about right here when that lead arm is parallel to the ground, and see where that shaft is pointing. Is it pointing outside of the golf ball, at the golf ball, or inside the golf ball? So if it's at the golf ball, pretty much at the golf ball, or a little bit outside the ball, that's a good place to be. That means that you're shallowing out the club. And then from there, if you're not opening up the body from there, it's just because you're not using your legs enough. Whereas if you're steep, let's say that butt end of the club is pointing inside of the golf ball. Well, when you're in this position, what has to happen in the downswing is you got to make compensations. So there's a couple things that typically happen. You're either going to continue to kind of go in this way and you'll swing over the top, or what we see most of the time, because we're good athletes and we're going to try and get this club to come back on plane, is that we stand up out of it to get this club drop underneath and to come on the plane. So when you do that, that's when you stand up, you can't really rotate, and you have to flip the club as you're coming through impact. So I would check that and see if you're coming down steep or not. So if you are shallowing out the club fine, then what it's coming down to mostly is it could, the main reason is probably because you're just not using your legs enough in the downswing to keep rotating through. So there's actually a great drill on the website, Kick the Clutch. I would check out, use the search engine on the website. And for those of you who may be new to the website, there's actually a great search engine on the website. You can find about anything. In the upper right-hand corner of about any page, there's a search bar. Use that to your advantage. If you have a question about something, I can all but almost guarantee that we have a video that touches on it at some point. There's so many videos on the site. So just do a search for, keyword, whatever it might be. For Alan here, it might be hip rotation or something like that. You can just put that in the search bar and you're going to be able to find a bunch of videos and drills to go along with it. But Kick the Clutch, search clutch. There's a couple of videos on the website where we're talking about in the downswing with that lead leg where you want to feel like you're kicking the clutch, like you're pushing so hard into the ground, you feel like you're going to break something underneath it, like you're trying to push a hole through the ground, basically. That's what you want to feel like as you're coming through there. So the other thing that it might be is that your hands are just way too overactive. You're trying to push that club through there, and then your arms and everything just kind of race out in front of your body. So you're just a little bit out of sequence. And for that one, I would recommend the Pet the Grass drill. That's from the straight line release section. And what that basically means is, let me angle this down a little bit. So you may be coming down, you may be shallowing it out and opening everything as you should, but just because you're trying to gain so much speed, you're really pushing this through, and you don't get that forward shaft lane in the body to continue to move through. So what you maybe want to do is get the feeling that as you're coming through, that you're covering more of the ball with your hand as you're coming through. You're getting the palm of your hand pointed down to the golf ball, and then it's releasing out in front. That may be more what you're going for or what you may need, but you'll need to look at your swing and make the assessment there. If you'd like any help with that, I'd be happy to help you. I do have some swing review spots open. So you can go to the swing review page. I believe there's a link on this page. If not, you can go to the top of the page, click get a review, and you can go to where you can sign up for the swing reviews if you want expert instructor feedback on that. All right. Okay. Leo Nicholas got his question up here. So he says, have you reviewed the True Swing club sensor? Are these more effective than swing radars? In conducting the swing review, do you evaluate the flaws and improvements? Again, the TSG areas, and are there measures? So two-part question here, it sounds like. So I'm not even familiar with what a True Swing club sensor is, so I haven't checked that out. As far as, if you're looking for, it depends on what you're looking for. So if you're looking for something that's going to measure your club head speed, Swing Caddy 2 and a Swing Speed Radar are both going to be really good options for you. There's lots of devices out there that measure these things, and we've tested a lot of them. And the Swing Caddy 2 is very, very accurate. The only thing about the Swing Caddy 2 is that you can't really have it out in the sun, especially the Florida sun, for a long, long period of time. So they'll start acting a little bit funny. It's like if you left your phone out and the sun was just beating on it for hours, it'll start acting funny. So it's kind of the same thing. I haven't had that issue with the Swing Speed Radars, at least from what I can tell. But the Swing Caddies too do have a little bit of issue with that. But they're very, very accurate. And they give you your ball speed, your club head speed, and they give you an estimated distance. But the real number when you're speed training, the real number you want to look at is club head speed. So that would be what I would recommend. Unfortunately, there really isn't a accurate consumer product out there that's going to give you any kind of other club data, at least to my knowledge. I'm sure there will be in the coming years just because things are advancing so much. So, but at this time, there really isn't. You have to spend, thousands and thousands of dollars to get anything that really is very accurate. And really, these things are nice to have. These the radars, like we have, a couple of them. We have a flight scope and things. It's nice to really show on videos the degrees. It's nice to know all those things. But honestly, as a golfer, just trying to improve, really, if you just know some things about ball flight and the way what happens when you hit the ball a certain way, you really don't need, if you can base things on that feedback, you really don't need something to tell you that you're swinging in to out or out to in, or if you're hitting too much down on the ball, because you're going to have the knowledge to be able to assess those things. So our ball striking masterclass is really, really good for teaching you that. You're going to be able to evaluate your ball flight and look at what your ball flight is doing and how you hit the ball on the face and your divots, and be able to make a pretty accurate assessment and make an adjustment based on what you're seeing with that feedback. So that's what I would really recommend. And I think it's much better to have the knowledge and what you're actually seeing than to just have something that just kind of tells you what it is. All right. So, and then he asked about swing reviews. Do we evaluate the flaws and improvements again, the 5 TSG areas, and are there a measure? So the way the swing reviews work, essentially what we do is we use a software or an app that's called V1 Golf. And it's very, very easy to use. You just take a video of your swing from face on and from down the line. And let's say you want to work on distance. Well, in that case, you would send a video face on down the line of a driver swing, because that's really where we want to focus on distance the most. And then what we do is we would, look at your swing, and we would take you through, some sort of protocol to help you to give you some distance. So typically the way I conduct swing reviews is I basically ask you, what's the one thing that costs you the most strokes out on the course? And we try to tackle that one thing, because that's really what's going to help you to handicap the most. For a lot of people, that's distance. For a lot of people, they say it's I slice the ball too much, or things like that. So we look at your swing and we try to fix that piece, and then we just try to build. We move on to whatever the next. Once we get that fixed, then we move on to whatever the next piece is that you want to work on. But in swing reviews, we'll work on whatever you want to work on. You just have to communicate that with us, and we'll help you reach your goals, whatever you want to do, for sure. So let me move on. So these are all the people saying, yes, you can hear me. All right. So Rod P says, please discuss bounce and explain why a tour player would use a less lofted club and open up the face. Thanks. That's a great question. All right. So let me grab a wedge here. All right. So right here I have, this is a 56-degree wedge. So it's got, this is an old wedge I used to have. It's got about 8 degrees of bounce, which really isn't much. I like a little bit more bounce. But basically, as far as bounce is concerned, I usually recommend a little bit more bounce for people. The only time I would recommend a small amount of bounce, because 8 degrees really isn't much, would be if you really play in very tightly mowing conditions a lot. Because what that does, what the bounce is it's this angle right here. So if you're looking at it, it's this flange that's on the bottom of the club here. It's that angle. So if you have this straight up and down, there's an 8-degree angle there. So that lifts the leading edge up off the ground. So if you play in really tightly mown fairways, very tight and dry conditions, you may want a little less bounce so that the leading edge can get underneath the ball. But most people don't play in conditions like that. Most people play, kind of softer, a little bit more plush conditions. In that case, I would err toward a little bit more bounce. What the bounce allows you to do is it glides through the turf. So if I have the leading edge like this, that leading edge is really going to dig into the ground, and your timing with the golf ball has to be really, really perfect. It's mainly for sand. So for sand, if this face square or closed, what's going to happen is that club's going to dig down into the sand. You're not going to be able to get the ball out. So what you want to do is you want to open up this face, get it pointing, straight up in the air, especially out of the sand, and use that bounce of the club so that the club can slide through the sand and then shoot the ball up out of there. But as far as using different lofts, so there's basically an area. There's something that's called spin loft. So what spin loft is the difference between your attack angle which is the angle that the club is coming into the ball, and your dynamic loft, which is the loft of the club face at impact. So this is a 56-degree wedge. That's the static loft. So that means if I have it straight up and down here, that's 56 degrees. Well, at impact, we want to have some forward shaft lean so that we can have a stable impact. And when that happens, you're de-lofting the face. So when you open up that face and you have forward shaft lean, that adds more loft, and it also exposes the bounce more. So if I have this straight up and down like this, and I open it up, now you can see how I've put more bounce in there. So the reason why you'd want to open up the face would be to expose more bounce and to also add more loft to the face. And the reason why you would maybe want to use less loft, it really depends on the shot, but there's kind of a sweet spot for a spin loft. What I was talking about before, your difference between angle of attack and dynamic loft, and that really determines a lot of how much spin you get on the ball. So there's a sweet spot for that, and that's 50 to 55 degrees, somewhere in there. So if you're getting forward shaft lean, let's say you're leaning the shaft forward, you have a 56-degree wedge, and you're leaning the shaft forward, let's say you're leaning it forward 12 degrees. Well, you've taken 12 degrees of the loft off the face, which now you're bringing that down to 44 degrees. So maybe you want to open that up a little bit to get that back up there where you're getting that maximum amount of spin. So if you use less loft, maybe you're in wet conditions, because that spin loft, that sweet spot for the spin loft number, that goes down in certain conditions. So if the ball is wet, if the conditions are wet, that ball is going to slip up the face more. So you'd want less loft to get more spin. So hopefully that makes sense. That's why, I don't know if you've ever tried to hit like a flop shot out of really wet grass, but if you really, really open up the face and you get the ball to go up really, really high, but when it hits, it kind of rolls out a little bit sometimes. Well, that's because it really doesn't have much spin on it, because when you came in and you hit the ball, it's kind of slipped on the face. Now it went straight up in the air, but it didn't, the face didn't really grab it. It kind of slipped up the face. So it didn't have a lot of spin on it. So that's kind of what's happening there. So you want some, little less loft in there in that case, if you're wanting to go for spin to help it grab the ball a bit, albeit the ball's going to come out lower. So it's just kind of, you have to depend on the kind of shot that you're wanting to hit. So hopefully that answered your question. Those are the kind of questions that I like answering. That was a good challenging one there, not one I get a ton. All right, so people can hear me. That's good. All right, so let me get a drink here. So William F, good, you're still here. Yeah, he was one of the first questions that I didn't want to answer yet until I knew he was here. So he said, this is Sean. Oh, hey, Sean Fitchett. All right, cool. He did the testimonial. I don't know if you've seen it on our website, but Sean did an awesome testimonial for us. Really, really great guy. He said, my question is, if I go to a stronger grip, a little past neutral, will that help to naturally want to roll your hands over and close the face? Yes, I believe it will. Not necessarily, because we do adapt. But what I would recommend doing is, if you go to a stronger grip, that is going to help you to get the face closed a little bit more. Because if you have, let's say you had the same wrist angles at impact with a neutral grip that you do with a stronger grip. Well, with a stronger grip, that face is going to be closed a little bit more. So, but at the same time, we're also very adaptable as humans. So you're likely going to get, it doesn't mean everything's going to start going left. You're going to start getting the face closed. What I would recommend doing, there's a couple of things you can do. One, you can go out to the course and kind of test, go to one extreme to the other with the grips. Like do some swings with a super strong grip, like a crazy strong Paul Azinger type of grip, and then maybe do some swings with a weaker grip, like a Ben Hogan type grip, and go through the entire spectrum. Just make it a little weaker every single time, and then see what kind of results you get. Hit a few balls from every single type of grip and find out what works best for you. The other thing is if you're struggling to get that face closed, what I would recommend doing is I would go to 1.2 of the move section, and that's going to be a drill here. I can kind of show you. So 1.2 of the move section is a drill where you practice on getting the face closed. You can't really see me. Getting that face closed down. So what you're going to do is you're going to come down here, and typically you'd have that face kind of pointing at the camera here. So at this point in the swing, what we want to do to get this club face squaring earlier is to turn that down to the ground to where that face is now pointing down to the ground. And then from there, I'm just going into impact like that. You can see I have a crazy amount of forward shaft lean, and you can't really see the face, but the face is dead square right here. And that's because I've turned it down. So what that means is if you watch how I have this, let me get more of a neutral grip here. So if I have this is a neutral grip, you can see that this face is pretty much pointing straight up. So if I take my wrist and I go like that, you can see how now the face is going that way. So that's the feeling that you want to have, is that as you're coming in to impact, you're going to get that face squaring up by bowing that left wrist. That right wrist is going to bend back. This is I believe you're right-handed. So as you're coming in, you're going to get this feeling. As you're coming in, you're going to be able to get that face nice and square at impact with forward shaft lean. All right. So Jan D says, yesterday all my balls, driver, 3-wood irons went about 30 degrees right. It has not happened before. What was the cause? Jan, you can go, and I hope you watched what I just showed, because that right there is likely what's happening is you're not getting that club face to close it or to square up as you're coming into impact. You're kind of leaving that face open. So what I recommend is for you as well, go to that 1.2, compress the heck out of the ball video from the move. And that drill is really going to help you to get that club face squaring up and help you to allow you to get that forward shaft lean and to have a square club face at impact. So I definitely take a look at that for sure. All right, Glenn G says, why do I pull my wedges, hit high irons and slight draw, and fade low irons? My setup, grip, ball position are the same for each. So it's a little hard to say without seeing exactly what's going on. But a pull is a product of a closed club face and a path that is kind of over the top a little bit, that's out to in. So if you're pulling your wedges, I would try to feel like I would first try to get your path to be more neutral. So I would try to feel like you're swinging more into out and see if that helps with that. And then if you hit your irons high, that means that you're adding loft to the face. So I would try to work on getting some forward shaft lean with those. So that's going to be working through maybe, if you're casting from the top, basically, adding loft to the face is a product of releasing the club early. So you want to look at the things that are causing you to release the club early. So that would be, if you're casting the club, you're almost guaranteed to release the club early. So I would look at, make sure that you're lagging the club in the downswing, so you're generating lag. So at the top of the swing, we want to have this, and then we want to sharpen that angle as we're coming down. So if you're doing that, well, that means that you're casting and you're going to release the club early almost no matter what. So I'd look at that. If you are generating some lag, I would look at make sure that you're shallowing out the club, because like we talked about before earlier in this office hours, if you're steep, you're going to have to flip the club to shallow it out late. Otherwise, you're just going to go straight down into the ground. So you'll want to make sure that you're not coming down steep. And then if you are coming in shallow and you're generating lag and you're doing all those things, I would look at your release, and I would work on that straight line release and getting that club to release out in front. But as far as, that's a question that, there's all kinds of things that can be going on there. And it's really, really hard for me to say without being able to see your swing. So maybe the best thing for it would be, joining our Elemented Swing Review program. I do have spots open. So if you want to join me, I'd be happy to take a look at your swing and give you a more, definitely a more personal, more tailored answer to your question for sure. All right. So Chapon, back again today. Awesome. Answered quite a few questions for you yesterday. So he says, hello again. Could you go over the hand path versus club path? So basically club path is basically going to be your in to out movement or your left to right movement of the club head through impact. So if you see a ball, actually, let's draw this out. I can kind of show you what that is. I got a marker in here somewhere. So I'm not sure. Hopefully you guys will be able to see this. But if we're looking at, we'll give this a try. I'm not sure if it's going to work very well. Let me see. Oh, yeah, you guys can see that for sure. All right, so if this, we're looking at a bird's eye view of the golf ball right here. This is a bird's eye view. So if this club, this is going to be the path of the club. So if this club is coming in like this, okay, so it's coming in on an arc. Well, this is the perpendicular of that contact point. So that means that our club path is moving in that direction. It's out to the right. So that would be an in to out club path. And sometimes you get a club path that's moving more like that, right? Well, now our club path is moving in that direction. So that's basically your club path. Your club path is what determines what puts the curvature on the ball. The ball's going to start in the direction of the club face, and then it's going to curve away from your club path. So if you have a club face that's square and a club path that's left, that ball is going to start straight, and then it's going to curve to the right. So that's basically what club path is. Now, hand path is just the way that your hands are moving into impact. So a lot of times what's happening is that your hands are starting or get about right here. Let me see. I'll angle this a little bit lower. So your hands are getting about right here, and they're turning the corner, so to speak. So right now my hands are moving left. Now they're turning the corner, and they're moving left. Well, at that point, my club is still moving out to the right. It just happens a little bit later. So a lot of times your club path kind of follows your hand path. You know, a lot of times it will, because this is the force that you're putting in, and the club, the mass of the club, is going to want to follow that force. So if you think about swinging into out, you may want to think that your hands are moving more out like that to get the club to work into out. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you guys were able to see that. That's the first time I've used that. I was a little afraid, since it's a glass thing, that you guys wouldn't be able to see it very well, but actually turns out pretty well on there. All right. Peter O, he says, can you suggest a good exercise for starting the downswing by turning the hips? Yes, sir. We'll go over one of my favorite drills, weight shift drills. It's called the step drill. So angle this down just a little bit more. So what you're going to be doing with this step drill, you still can't see me very well. There we go. So what you're going to be doing in this step drill is you're basically going to be setting up as you normally would. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this and put your foot there. And then what I want you to do is point this club out in front. And then as soon as this club passes in front of your legs, you're going to start stepping forward. And I'm not going to do it because I got this glass thing behind me, but you're going to start stepping forward and turn your back to the target. And then when that foot comes on the ground, then you're going to start opening up. So I want you to feel like you're kind of squishing down into the ground a little bit and then turning everything open. What this is going to do is it's going to force you to get your momentum moving this way at the correct time in the swing. So the timing of this is really key. That's why I asked you to point this club out in front. And then when it's passing in front of your legs right here, as you're bringing it back, that's when you want to start stepping forward. Because what I see a lot of people do is they do the step drill, they bring the club up to the top, and then they start stepping forward. Well, that's way too late. So you got to get that club, you got to get stepping forward sooner. There are some videos on the website for this. If you just search downswing, there'll be a couple of good videos there where you'll see Clay demonstrating that step drill. But we use this in our distance clinics to help you gain some speed and things like that. So it's really good for getting that sequencing down. It's really good for generating speed as well. So give that a try, and that should help you quite a bit with getting those hips to turn. All right. So Bruce W says, I'm watching the pattern section on your website. Pattern section. Not sure what he's referring to there. Play when he completes his backswing by turning his shoulders has a much higher final position than I do. I'm 5'7", 67 years old, and when I do what I think he is saying, I end up with a height that resembles Matt Kuchar, very flat and behind me. So you're talking about trying to get your hands higher in the swing. So it's kind of like what someone else was talking about earlier. They have a flexibility issue where they're not able to get their arms up really high. So I would test that. See, you may feel, feel is not always real. You may feel like you're punching your hands to the ceiling, but in reality, you're kind of flat, like what you see with Matt Kuchar. Now you can play some great golf. I mean, I'd love to have Matt Kuchar's bank account, right? So you can play some great golf doing that. It's not going to be as conducive to speed. And you mentioned you're 5'7". Matt Kuchar is probably like 6'2" or 6'3" or something like that. So he's got some leverage there with his height that helps him still be able to get some distance. If you're kind of on the shorter side and older, I recommend having a little bit more of a vertical swing, because that, usually distance is going to be a big key for you. But I would test that out. So the way you can test that out is basically just to stand with your back up against the wall, flat up against the wall. You got to have your spine completely touching the wall, and then put your arms straight out in front of you with your thumbs up, and just keep your arms dead straight, almost like you're doing a touchdown. Go as far back as you can. See how far you can go. Now, if you're not able to get to the wall, your thumbs to the wall without your back coming off the wall, or without bending your arms, then you might have a little bit of a limitation there that's not allowing you to get your arms up high enough. So with that, you may want to, like I said, that might be something that a chiropractor may help you with. There might be something going on. Josh Eaton, our founder, one of the founders of Top Speed Golf, he had an issue where, he literally couldn't lift his arms up any higher than this. So he had a very similar issue, and he went to see somebody about it. And it was something in between his shoulder blades that they worked out. And he had to work out with a ball on it every single day. And now he has a very vertical swing, and he's bombing drives. So, it might be something as simple as that that's just causing you not to be able to get there. But if there is no limitation there, then the only thing that's stopping you from doing it is you're just not comfortable with it. So what I would try to feel like is that you're trying to get your hands up above your head when you're trying to get up there. So one thing that you can kind of do to make this, to basically as a little exercise to do, if I angle this down a little bit, is if you were just to set up to the ball here and then take this to a 90-degree angle. So I got a 90-degree angle here. And then from there, I'm gonna assume you're right-handed. Just take that club, keep that left arm straight, and just lift it up above your shoulder here, right up above your right shoulder. And then from there, try not to break anything here. From there, all you have to do is turn. So now I have a very vertical swing once I turn my shoulders. So that helps you realize that there's a lot more lifting in the swing. I think a lot of people, they're so used to rotating, making sure they rotate everything, that they don't lift their arms. So to get a big turn and a big range of motion, you not only have to rotate your hips and rotate your shoulders, there's a lifting that's in it as well. And that's going to be using these muscles right here on the front, these deltoids right here. These are the front muscles of your shoulders. That's what lifts things up. So that's what you're going to be feeling as you're lifting up. So you may want to feel like, to exaggerate this, that you're lifting 100%. You're lifting as much as possible to get that club up in the air So I would check out those couple things. But like I said, without really knowing and seeing for sure, it's hard for me to know exactly what it is. But hopefully that helps you out. Then he talked about his typo. All right, I think I got you. All right, so Robert L here says when Clay puts his club across his shoulders, his turn is very steep. However, when I watch the swing, his shoulders move more around to complete the hip turn. Please elaborate. So that's a good question. Let me get a drink here real quick. So when you're doing the club across the shoulders, when you're doing that, what you want to make sure of is when you're turning back, you want to make sure that that butt end of the club is pointing. With a driver, it can be 4 to 8 feet, around 8 feet on the other side of the golf ball. And the only reason why it can be a little bit flatter is because the driver is a longer club. So if I were to use a driver here, the driver is a much longer club, so you're standing more upright with it. Whereas with a wedge, you're more like this, and with a driver, you're more like this. So you're a little bit more upright. So your shoulders, if you're going perpendicular to your spine with your shoulders, so if my spine is like this, my shoulders are perpendicular to that. So if you're going perpendicular to that, that's going to be 6, 8 feet beyond the other side of the golf ball. So that's where you want to be with it, because if you're going back and you're doing this, well, there's a couple things that are going to happen. One, you're coming up out of your posture, and now you have to make a compensation in the downswing to get back down to the golf ball. That's going to cause some really inconsistencies. It's hard to be very consistent if you're doing that. The other thing is if I'm like this, I can't really see the golf ball. So what's likely going to happen is if I'm coming out of my posture, I'm only going to turn about this much. So if we're looking at it from this view, I'm only going to turn. That's not a very big turn. That's really going to limit how much power I can generate. So if I stay steeper and I can see the golf ball now, and I'm also staying in my posture, so I'm able to stay more consistent with it. So now when Clay's doing the drill, he may be exaggerating it a little bit more than what's actually happening in the swing. But I'm sure if you take his swing and you draw that line, if you go to the very top of the swing and you draw a line from shoulder socket to shoulder socket and let it go all the way out. So if you draw this line right here where this club is pointing all the way out, that's probably going to be about 8 feet or so beyond the golf ball. And that's a good place to be. Now with a wedge or something like that, it's going to be steeper. It's going to be more down toward the golf ball because it's a shorter club. You're more bent over the ball and your shoulder turn is steeper as you're coming through there. All right. So Steve T says, at setup, does it help to get forward shaft lean by setting up with the hands ahead? Is it different for an iron versus a driver? That's a good question. Basically, the answer to anything, pretty much anything at address is that the only thing that really matters is impact. So you should do everything in your address and in your backswing to help you get to a good impact position. But a lot of times it doesn't matter. If I set up with the driver, let me angle this down a little bit. All right, so if I set up with the driver, all right, this would be kind of more neutral. I just kind of have my arms kind of hanging straight down. The shaft is pretty much straight up and down. If I set up like this versus like this, it's probably not going to make much of a difference for me, but it could make a difference for you. So what I'd recommend doing is, find the setup position that allows you to get into the best impact position. So if setting up with your hands more forward at address gets you in a better impact position, and then albeit go for it, let's do that. And setting up with your hands more this way, if that helps you get a better impact position, then so be it. We'll go with that. That's some things, in the Top Speed Golf system, those are the things that really, really matter the most. So we're talking our spine angle, we're talking our turn, we're talking lag, release of the club, our compression line, the move, we'll add that in there. Those are the things that you really have to do to hit the ball really, really well. Set up position and where the hands are associated aren't a part of the Tusby golf system, because you're going to look on tour and you're going to see a million different setup positions with the hands. You're going to see forward, you're going to see straight up and down, you're going to see a slight press, you're going to see all kinds of things. And the reason for that is that they're really not that important in the grand scheme of things when it comes to hitting the golf ball. But they may be important on an individual basis, because you may hit the ball much better with your hands pressed forward versus when they're back. You just have to find what works best for you. The Tusby golf system, those are all universal truths. Those are things that everyone needs to be doing in order to hit the ball well. So I would just go out to the range and practice that. See what gives you the best results, and whichever that is, that's the one I would go with for sure. All right. So Brian D says, how can I download lessons to add to the tablet to take to the range? So unfortunately, the videos on the website are not downloadable. They are mobile friendly though. So if you have Wi-Fi nearby, or I know a lot of tablets don't have, unless you have like a data plan with it, you're not going to be able to use that. But you can use your phone as a hotspot. That's something I use when I have my tablet out on the road. I'll use my phone as a hotspot and be able to take a look at it. But yeah, you have to have an internet connection in order to watch the videos, like if you're out on the range or something like that. All right. So Michael F says, what does an older golfer do who has physical limitations, lack of flexibility that prohibit getting into the correct positions prescribed in the TSG systems? Just do the best I can. So that's a good question. There's all kinds of, really the main thing is that as far as physical limitations go, is you want to make sure that you're getting a big turn. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. I went over them a little bit earlier, but essentially to get that maximum range of motion, you want to do a couple things. So let's go over that again real quick. I'll angle this down so you can see my feet. So number one is, we're kind of getting my carpet's getting caught up here. There we go. So number one is that you want to set up with your trail foot a little bit open. And the reason for that is if I'm turning my hips here, you're internally, when you're turning your hips, your leg is internally rotating. So if you have a limitation there, which if you're getting older, you may have some limitations in your hips and things like that. If you have a limitation there, you may want to, instead of, I see a lot of guys, they set up with their feet dead square like this. Now this may look better, it's aesthetically pleasing, but it's not really what you want to do in the golf swing if you want a big range of movement. So what I'd recommend doing is just flaring these things out. So that way you get the internal rotation. You're easing up on that so that you can turn. So flare that foot out so that when you can turn back, you can get your hips to turn more. And if you can get your hips to turn more, you can get your shoulders to turn more, and be able to get a bigger turn. The other thing is this left heel. So, or the lead heel. When you're turning back, don't be afraid to lift that thing off the ground, because if you keep this planted, let's say you have a limitation here in your hips, if you keep that hip or that foot planted, what's going to happen is it's going to act as an anchor, and you're not going to be able to turn your hips anymore. So what you want to do is free that up, loosen that up, and let that heel come up, and to allow your hips to turn more so you can get your shoulders to turn more. So those are really the two biggest things. And we found, trust me, I've worked with a ton of people at our distance clinics. Most of the people that come to our distance clinics, they're retired guys, and they're older in age, and they're struggling with the same things you are. So those are the two biggest things that we tell them. And we see people, they gain 10 miles an hour, at least typically, when they come and see us and work through that distance clinic. So I would definitely recommend those. We do have a section on the website. It's called Play Your Best Golf After 50, I think it's called. So I would go check that out. There's some other great tips in there to help you with some limitations as far as the Tusby golf system. But really, the Tusby golf system is it's intended for all ages. It's just there may be some alterations you can make to help you to fit these things. So I would definitely check out that section for sure. All right. So William F says, yes, sir. I'm still here. Good morning, Q. This is Sean. All right. So it looks like he posted his question again. So hopefully you were around. You got that answered, Sean. How many degrees of shoulder lean away from the target at impact do you recommend? As I understand it, the pros are 20 to 24%. So that's a good question. So what we want to see is you're coming into impact. So let's just kind of go through the swing a little bit here. So at address, we want to be slightly angled away. So we're talking about, 6 to 8 degrees angled away. You can be a little bit more with a driver. You can be more in the 10 to 12 degree angled away range. That's because you're wider, the ball is further up in your stance, and we're trying to hit up on the ball. So that's fine with a driver, but anything off the turf, 6 to 8 degrees is a good place to be. And that's going from the center of your sternum here. So right there, right down to the belly button. That's basically where you want to measure it. So if you're at home doing exactly what I'm doing here with the club, that's where you want to put it. And then really the best way for that is just for it to be angled toward the inside of your foot. That's going to put you in a really good position for most people. If you have a super wide stance, it's not going to be that much. But for most people, with a shoulder width stance or just outside of shoulder width, if you angle that 6 to 8 degrees, it's going to be pointed right to the inside of your foot. And then all the way up to the top of the swing, we want that to remain that spine angle. So if we watch your torso, we want your torso as you're twisting up to the top to remain in that spine tilt. So if you're going up to the top and you're doing this, well, that's the reverse spine angle. You're going to have to make compensations in the downswing. Also, incidentally, you're probably going to have back trouble because that's very, very hard on your back. It's one of the number one issues with back pain in golf is that reverse spine angle. So if you have a bad back, I'd maybe look at your spine angle and make sure that you're not doing this at the top of the swing. And then in the downswing, we're going to slowly increase that spine angle. So as we're turning our hips and opening up and we're getting to our lead side, that spine angle is steepening. So if we draw a line from the center of our shoulders here, if we're looking from face on, and the center of our hips, that's going to be 20 to 25 degrees somewhere in there. So part of that is when the hips are rotating open, they're narrowing, right? So from here, my hips are the widest because we're looking straight on. If I turn, now my hips are narrower, right? So as you're rotating open, those hips are narrowing up and you're getting to your lead side and that spine angle is going away. So you're not actually going from, this to this. Your spine angle is getting a little bit more, but because your hips are rotating open, that where that center is of your hips is also moving forward because your hips are rotating open. So if you're coming into impact and your hips are dead square to the ball, which we see a lot with amateurs, the hips aren't really rotating open, you're not going to see that 20 to 25 degree angle as you're coming into impact. You're going to see less than that. It's going to be probably a bit more unless you're really bumping out your hips, which we see a lot as well. We see people get to that 20, 25 degree angle, but it's because as they're coming into impact, they're way bumped out. You can't really see my lower body, but if you look at my lower body here, I'm way bumped out. And if you look at my compression line, my hip is if I draw a line from my shoulder down to my ankle, that line is going through like right here, and my hip is way bumped out ahead of that. But my hips are square. If I'm looking from this angle, my hips are square. What you want is the hips rotating open into the ball. And then from this angle, now you can see now everything's in a nice straight line there. And my hips are narrower, so that angle gets a little bit more angled away. So hopefully that makes sense for you. All right, so just answered George's question. Ramiro T says, when I bow my wrist on the downswing, I tend to hook the ball. Any suggestions? So the reason for that is you're getting your club face close to the path. Your club face is getting too close. So a lot of times when people tell me, hey, I'm bowing my wrist at impact, everything's going left. Well, what bowing the wrist does is that squares up the face. Let me use a different club here. What bowing the wrist does is that closes the face. So see, I'm bowing my wrist. That face is closing. So that's what allows you to square up the face when you get forward shaft lean at impact. So if you're not getting forward shaft lean, let's angle this down so you can kind of see down here. if you're coming, oops, keep tripping on my carpet. If you're coming into impact and you're bowing the wrist, but you're not getting forward shaft lean, still can't really see the face. Angle it down a little bit more. There we go. There we go. So if you're coming into impact and you're bowing this wrist, so I'm turning this face down and I'm not getting forward shaft lean. Well, now look at that. This is exaggerated, but look at that face. It's pointed way over there. So now if I'm bowing this wrist, now let me get forward shaft lean. Okay, now look at my face is squared up and now I have forward shaft lean. So if you're getting that ball is hooking on you, it's going way left on you, then that means that you're not really getting that forward shaft lean as you're coming through there. So what I would recommend doing is working through that move section, taking a look at that move section and getting a better understanding of what you're trying to do there and working through the drills in there. And that's going to help you to get that forward shaft lean as you're getting through there. That first drill in there, just feeling that club face closing down and feeling that compression on the ball is really, really going to help you to understand exactly what you're trying to achieve. And then if you go step by step and do all the reps and everything, that's really going to help you to start getting some forward shaft lean and also get the ball to go straighter. Because that's the whole idea, is to get some forward shaft lean and to get some straight ball flight, because we don't want to be hooking it all over the place. That's just going to make things worse for sure. So, all right. So Lyle W says, given that lag is so important in the swing, when does one begin to transition to the release crossover? That's a great question. So we have something that's called the max lag position in the swing. And this is the point where that you're talking about, where you're getting the tightest angle of lag, where you're getting that smallest angle of your lead forearm in the shaft. And that's from there, everything starts releasing. So what we typically see, or what you want to have happen, is you want that to happen when that lead forearm is about parallel to the ground in the downswing. So we want to be generating lag in the downswing. So if we're going up to the top, angle this down a little bit. Sorry, I wish I had a ton of room in here and I could maybe someday, but as you're coming down, so you're getting up to the top here, and as you're coming down, I have this angle at the top, and as I'm coming down, I want to be generating lag. So this angle here is going to be getting smaller. And then from here, from this lead arm is parallel to the ground, so that's about right there. That's when we start to see that angle start to increase, and you start to get that club releasing out in front. So if you go and look at pretty much any professional player's swing, and you can go on V1, the app, V1 Golf app, and you can look at professional swings, and you can draw lines on there. I would go and take a look at a bunch of them and see where that max lag position is, see where that angle is getting the smallest. So what we generally want to see is the main thing is you don't want to get this angle increasing from the top of the swing, because that means you're casting. So you either want to be that angle getting smaller to that lead forearm parallel to the ground, or you see some guys that kind of stays the same. It doesn't really, they're not really generating lag. They're generating lag in a sense that their swing is continuing and they're not casting the club. So they are generating lag. It just doesn't look like it as much because the club's not tightening up. But what you want to do is you want to get that shaft tightening up, and then from there releasing out in front from when that lead forearm is parallel to the ground in the downswing, or a little bit later. But if you go take a look at a lot of pros, that's what you're going to see. You're going to get a really good understanding of where that is releasing from. Now, it doesn't look like it's releasing from there. It looks like it's releasing, down here, because in the beginning there, it's very, very slow. It's very slowly starting to release. But you're seeing this is the max position where it's the tightest. And then from there, it slowly starts to release. And then at the ball, it really releases out in front very, very quickly. So that's why it looks like they're holding things off until impact, but that's not the reality. They're generating lag. And then as soon as they're generating that lag, they're releasing it out in front as quickly as they can. So that's the feeling that you want to have. That's how you get speed. All right. All right, so Lyle again here says, when you begin the foreswing, so I assume that you mean the downswing by that, what should your hips be doing? Moving forward or rotating circularly? So both, actually. So in the beginning of the downswing, you're going to have a little bit of a lateral shift. So there's going to be a little bit of a lateral shift. And then once you start feeling that pressure in your lead leg, you're going to start rotating from there. So, and that's actually happening before you complete the backswing. So as the club's going up, you're actually getting to your left side. And then before you even start, as you're starting that downswing, you're pushing into the ground to start rotating open. So as far as, the backswing technically starts when the club switches directions. So it's here, and then the club switches directions. So you're actually you're getting to your left side during the end of the backswing. And then in the downswing is when you're going to be pushing before that begins. And that's going to start the sequence, because it starts from the ground up. You're starting from here, you're getting the legs and the hips moving, then you're getting the torso going, then you're getting the shoulders going, and then that's when the club goes. So hopefully that makes sense for you. All right. So we're getting about 10 o'clock here. I'm going to answer. I'm not sure how many questions are left. I'm going to answer as many questions as I can here. We'll go a little bit longer today if there's a lot of people in here that still have questions answered. So no issue with that at all. I may need to refill my drink here. All right. So Jeff J says, when getting into my stance or setup, my hips lifter muscle area always feels real tight. Should it be loose and relaxed? Do you keep your core abs tight? I would say you want to be fairly relaxed at address. Not sure what you mean by the hips lifter muscles. Maybe you mean like your glutes. So I would say you're going to keep everything fairly relaxed and loose. If you're really, really flexed and tense, I don't feel like you can use your muscles as much. I would say I'm not an expert on that, but just in general, from what I have found, if you're really kind of flexing everything, it's going to be harder to move. So if you're more loose and then let your muscles engage as you're starting to move, that's going to help you the most. So I wouldn't feel like you're kind of clinching or really trying to tighten your abs while you're swinging. That can also cause strain, I think, if you do that. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend feeling more relaxed and then let your muscles engage. With that might be a better question for, I don't know, maybe someone who's like a physical trainer, as far as someone knows a lot more about the muscles and things and contraction and things like that than I do. I will say I'm not like an expert on that. So, but definitely something I may want to learn about. So thanks for the question. Chris P says, my right hand address has the V pointed at my shoulder. During the swing, my right hand moves to where it is more on the right side of the club, stronger. How can I prevent this regripping? What I'd recommend doing is just to get into the grip position that is the most comfortable for you and allows you to have the best impact position. So it sounds like your body kind of wants to be in a different position than what you're putting it in, as far as that goes. So, I would basically just try to put your hand in the position that it wants to be in and see if you're able to hit some good swings. You mentioned that it's pointing at your shoulder. That's already a pretty, that would be a fairly strong to neutral grip right there. I assume if you're right-handed, it's pointing at your right shoulder. But really, it's not that important as far as the swing goes. If you're seeing things in your, if it's affecting your impact, then maybe look at it. But if it's not, then it's really not an issue. But I would just try to feel like you're in the right position to begin with. The positions that's the most comfortable, and that way your body won't try to adapt to a different grip position that's more comfortable in the backswing. All right, so David E says, big trouble with flipping forever. What is a good drill to practice? The move. Pretty much whenever I see people who flip, it's almost always because they're coming down steep in transition. And just to kind of review what that is if we're looking from a down the line view, this club is steep. So it's kind of more vertical. And when that happens, you have to stand up out of it and shallow out late. And when you stand up, you have to flip the club to get to the ball. So that's what I see most of the time. So it's going to be the move section. If you are shallowing out the club just fine, then you're going to want to make sure you're not casting the club to begin with. So you may want to make sure that you're generating some lag in the swing. If you're generating lag, then you'll want to go to the release, because it's just about your hands are just trying to release the club to the ball as quickly as possible by pushing the right hand through. That's going to flip the club. So pet the grass drill, straight line release section, you may want to look at that. So I first look at the move, because it starts at the top of the swing, right? So if you're coming down steep, you're going to be fighting physics to get that club to release out in front. Physics usually wins, has a pretty good record. So I wouldn't recommend picking that fight. I would make sure that you're shallowing out the club, make sure you have that in order, and then that will just help everything make a lot easier, getting lag and all that stuff as well. All right. So James M says, can you show how you release the lag and what your hands do at the release? So basically, let's angle this down. So for releasing the lag, is basically you're going to come down, you're going to be generating lag, right? And to this position right here. And then from here, it's releasing that out in front as quickly as possible. So what you see a lot of times, people do this. We don't want to be releasing it here. That's when we're coming down steep. We want to be releasing that out in front. So what the hands are doing when the club is releasing is the hands, everything is now pointing at a point out in front. So if you think about a point that's about 4 feet in front of the golf ball, your chest, your arms, your hands, the club, everything is going to be releasing. You want that to be releasing to that point right there. That's where you want it to release. What we see with a lot of amateurs is we see that club is releasing about right here, maybe just in front of the golf ball or at the golf ball. You get that flippy motion, and it's really, really hard to play consistent golf when you're flipping the club. It's really hard to make good contact as well. So I would get that club releasing, feel like everything is releasing out front about 4 feet in front of the golf ball. That's where you want it. But you want to take a look at, make sure you're shallowing out the club, make sure you're generating lag. And then from there, it's just getting that club to release, getting used to it, releasing more out front instead of at the golf ball. All right. Peter says, thank you. No problem. My pleasure. Chayapod again says, just curious, many people encourage hitting for distance, but would hitting it faster make the ball go wilder? That is a great question. And they've actually done studies on this and found that the longest players are actually more accurate, or just as accurate as players that hit the ball short. If you look on tour, you look at the guy that hits the ball the shortest on tour, they are struggling to keep their card. You know, and if you look at the guy on tour who hits the most fairways, I'm sure it's someone you've never heard of, and they're probably struggling to stay on tour. You look at the guys that are hitting it longer on tour, they're the ones that are winning all the money. Look at the last year's top money list. There was only one guy on the list that it was Webb Simpson, that doesn't drive it on average over 300 yards. And he was at 293. And that is raised from he didn't used to hit the ball that long. He's longer than he used to be, because he's worked on his distance as well. That's where everything's going. It's really, I think it's been that way forever, but I think people are just more, the statistics, the advanced metrics and things like that are proving now that distance is king. It's really the most important thing. You know, we used to think, you know, drive for show and putt for dough. You know, putting is important. Don't get me wrong. It's very, very important, but it's not as important as, you know, as driving and hitting the ball long, because the reason for that is, you know, if you're hitting it short, well, now you're going to have a long club compared to other people into the green. So you're not going to be able to hit it as close to the hole. And it doesn't matter how good of a putter you are. If you have, you know, 30, 40-foot putts for birdie all the time, you're not going to make very many of them. So if you become longer, and let's say maybe you hit a couple that are in the rough or something like that, that's completely fine. But now you're going to have, instead of maybe an 8-iron or a 5-iron, maybe now you're going to have a wedge into the green. and you're going to be able, I don't know about you, but I'm going to be able to hit my wedge a lot closer to the hole most of the time than I have with my 5-iron. So I definitely recommend, and with that, you're going to make more putts. So longer drives equals shorter approaches equal closer proximity to the hole, closer proximity to the hole equals making more putts. So it makes you a better putter. So I would definitely be taking a look at that and trying to get more distance. If you're guiding the club, what we found is that if you're not going to hit all the fairways and all the greens, it's just not going to happen, regardless of whether you're swinging nice and easy or you're swinging hard. So we found that most people are just as accurate, if not more accurate, when they're swinging harder. And the reason is that we self-organize and we use our athletic ability to hit the ball. When you're swinging nice and easy, you're trying to guide the ball. And when that happens, you're just not any more accurate than you would be if you were using your athleticism. So you may as well just let it rip and get it down there, because it's not really going to make any difference in your accuracy. So I would definitely be giving that a try. Now, I wouldn't go out there and you hit a few wild ones and say, well, this is garbage. I hit it too wild. No, that just means that you're not quite comfortable swinging that hard yet. But the more that you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get with it, and the better you're going to get with it, and the better player you're going to become because of it. So, they've done studies as well that show that distance is one of the biggest correlations to handicap that there is out there. People who hit it longer have lower handicaps. So if you're looking to lower your handicap, distance is definitely something that you'll want to look into. All right, so Gabriel says, so I have a torn labrum in my left shoulder. A full backswing, especially when I bow my wrist, leads to inflammation, and it lasts for the whole season. I can swing without pain and with very good distance at 3/4 backswing, but I'm not sure how my backswing should finish when I do this. Could you discuss proper position at the top for this issue? I will say that if you have a physical limitation and it's very, very painful, you could only do what your body is capable of doing. So if you're looking for help with that, it's probably not a golf instructor that's going to be able to help you with that. You're going to be looking for a medical professional to help you with that, or maybe a physical therapist or something like that. That's going to help you to be able to get in a better position at the top. Maybe one that's familiar with golf, a TPI certified. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That is, was Titleist Performance Institute. They're basically experts in how the body moves in the golf swing. And, me and, Robin and Clay have all gone through certifications with them. And basically, what we can do as golf instructors is we can, do some testing and say, okay, yeah, you have a shoulder issue. But, as a golf professional, I can't help you with a shoulder issue. That's something that a doctor is going to need to help you with. It's like, you wouldn't go to a doctor for a golf lesson, right? So I wouldn't recommend necessarily going to a golf instructor for, a medical issue. So you're definitely going to want to get that checked out, but you can only do what your body is physically capable of doing. So that's where I would go with that, is just try to do the best you can and get into the positions that we talk about on the website. But if you have a physical issue that it may be stopping you from doing that, you may want to go to a doctor. And if there's nothing the doctor can do about it, then there really isn't. I mean, all you can do is just the best that you can do. So I know that's not like a magic answer or anything like that, but it's just kind of the reality of the situation. So sorry I wasn't able to help more with that, but we run into some issues if I try to give you any kind of medical advice, for sure. So Michael A says, what feeling thoughts should we have in the downswing? So that's a great question. So the feelings and thoughts that you want to have is mainly, for most amateurs, what I see is that you want to be leading with the lower body first. So get that lower body moving and start it from the ground up. So what we see with a lot of amateurs most of the time is that the swing starts from the top down. So the swing starts with the club coming down, and then the arms go, and then the hips go, and everything else. But what we want to have happen is we want to have the hips going, and then the torso, and then the shoulders, and then the club goes to get that kinematic sequence correctly and get that club releasing out front. Because if you have the club out in front of everything else, you're going to release that club early, and you're not going to be able to get that compression on the ball. You can play good golf doing that, but you're not gonna have the amount of speed that you're capable of, and you're gonna have a hard time being consistent because everything's gonna be so timing based. It's gonna be such a handsy and armsy swing that it's gonna be so timing based that you're gonna have good days and you're gonna have really bad days as well. So if you want to be a more consistent golfer, you want to start the swing from the ground up. There's some great videos on the website how to start the downswing. If you just search downswing on the website, I know for sure I was just in there the other day and I searched it because somebody asked me a question about it, and there were some great videos there. The step drill that I went over earlier is a really great one to help you get the feeling of the proper feeling to start the downswing. So I definitely check that out. All right, so Mike P says, appears the hands move very little from just before impact to straight line release, and the club head fires substantially. Does that mean that the arms begin to decelerate through impact toward the full finish? So you're exactly right. The hands don't really move much from impact to the straight line release. They maybe move a foot, and obviously the club is moving, several feet. We're talking probably 6 feet if we're talking the arc of the club. So that's what we want to have happen. We want that club releasing hard as we're going through impact so we can get a lot of speed. If your hands are moving more than what the club head is, you're not generating any speed at all. So that's exactly what we want to have happen. But the hands actually start to decelerate once they reach their lowest point, maybe even a little bit before that. But once they reach that lowest point, the hands are decelerating. And then at that point, then that club is starting to catch up, right? So the decelerating of one piece is going to accelerate the next piece. So that's what's happening in the swing, is that the hands are starting to decelerate. And then from when that club is parallel to the ground, ideally, what you're going to see in the best ball strikers, when that club is parallel to the ground, let me angle this down a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. So when that club is parallel to the ground, the hands are about, in front of the trail thigh, we're accelerating and we're starting to slow down about right here. And then from there, that club is really whipping through there and releasing out in front. That's what you see in the best ball strikers. So not sure if I exactly answer your question. Does that mean that the arms begin to decelerate through impact? So yeah, so everything is decelerating and it's transferring all that energy to the club. So like I was saying, when something decelerates, so let's say it's kind of like what happens when we flip, right? So when we're coming in, the hips decelerate. Well, that accelerates the arms and everything races out in front. So you may have seen Clay talk about this. If we have, let's pretend like my arm is a fan blade and I'm continuing to rotate. If I rotate at that same speed, well, this club is just going to continue to go along the line with my force. But now if I suddenly stop my arm, well, now this club is going to want to flip forward. Try not to hit my computer here, but the arm is decelerating. So now this club, you try this at home. Hold the club like this out in front and just kind of get going and just kind of stop. You're going to feel that club wanting to go forward. You're going to feel it in your hand. You're going to have to resist it to not allow it to happen. So that's what's happening in the golf swing, is that when your hands are slowing down, everything releases out in front. So hopefully that answers your question there. All right, so Michael A says, dropping the club, pulling down on a chain, like Sergio says, etc. Not really sure if that's a question or not, but so let's talk about what pulling the chain means. So I think that can be misconstrued a little bit because, if you technically pull down, if you have that pulling down motion, that club's going to get steep. So if we look at it here, if you are pulling down, well, we're talking about how that club wants to follow the force the mass does. So if you pull down, what's going to happen is that club's going to get steep. So what we wanted, the feeling of pulling down is really good for trying to generate that lag. We're trying to get that lag going, but we don't technically want to be pulling straight down. We kind of want to be pulling kind of more this way so that the club shallows out. So it's going to be more like that. Now we don't want to necessarily go right at the golf ball because that's going to cause us to flip a little bit, but it's kind of having that happy medium where you're not pulling straight down, but you're kind of like right in here. That's going to get the club to shallow out, and that's also going to get you to generate some lag. So we don't want to pull straight down, up and down vertical, but that feeling of pulling the chain that Sergio has, you know, he shallows the club like crazy. So for him, the feeling of pulling straight down is actually probably a good feeling for him because it helps him to generate that lag. Whereas for a lot of amateurs who are already steep in the swing, if they're pulling straight down for them, you know, that's just going to make things even worse. So you just got to look at your swing. You know, everyone feelings are going to work a little bit different from everybody. I'll tell you what, a question that I get all the time is, am I actively doing insert body part, right? Am I actively doing this with my whatever? And the answer to the question is usually, you know, it really depends on what your feeling is. So if people talk about, you know, with the release, am I actively pushing my right hand through with the release? Well, if you're releasing the club early and you can clearly see that your right hand is pushing that club through, that feel, you don't want to actively feel that then, right? You want to feel like your club is not, your right hand's not doing anything and the club's whipping through. Because if you feel that way, then you're just going to push that club through and you're going to flip through impact. So it's all about adjusting your feeling to get the desired result that you want. So use the feedback. Don't be afraid to film your swing. I feel like a lot of people are afraid to film their swing because maybe what it might look like, or if it's a pain in the neck or whatever. That's really one of the best feedback tools that you have for golf is taking a look at it on camera, because you know, the camera doesn't lie. It's going to tell you exactly, as long as you have your camera angles correct, you know, it's going to tell you exactly what's going on. So you'll want to adjust your feeling based on what you're seeing there. So hopefully that helps. Let's take a look at Anthony G's question. It says, hi, as I get older, I find my main problem is not physical, but mental. How can I stay focused over the whole round? I'm just 61 years of age. So I will tell you, again, this is something that I'm not an expert on. But I will say, as far as swing thoughts are concerned, I try to just have one or two. And if you have two, you need to just have a backswing thought and a downswing thought. And really, if you have two backswing thoughts, it's usually not going to work. Two downswing thoughts are definitely not going to work. So if you're going to try to just have one positive swing thoughts. And like I said, try to be completely positive. My golf coach in college, actually, he made us put paper clips in our pocket. We put, I don't know how many paper clips in there, but every time we had a negative thought during a practice round, we had to take one of those paper clips and put it in the other pocket. And then at the end, you would see how many paper clips. And obviously the goal would be to have no paper clips, you know, transferring to the other pocket. So just something about the act of taking a paper clip and putting it to the other pocket kind of makes you more weary of what you're doing. So that might be an exercise for you to try, but we do have a mental game section on the website. I will also recommend pretty much any book by Bob Rotella is really good on the mental game. But honestly, if you're, in my opinion, this is my opinion, if you're thinking that everything is mental, then you're really overthinking it, if that makes sense. So I would just focus on impact and, you know, one positive swing thought in your swing, two at most. And that's usually what helps most people. But if you want to check out, you know, Thad Leffingwell, he's a member of the website. He's also, he works for Oklahoma State University and is a sports psychologist there. He's worked with Ricky Fowler. I would take a look at our mental game section where he was kind enough to do some videos for us. There's some really, really great stuff in there, like taking, you know, three holes at a time and playing the golf instead of playing an 18-hole round, play little rounds of 3. I think those are good when you group them together. You know, your goal is to go, you know, 1 over through these 3 holes, and then, you know, I think it's really, really good to go about it in that way. So take a look at that, watch some of those videos, and hopefully those will help you. All right. So Lyle again here says, thanks so much, Q. That helped considerably. Great simulation. Oh, no problem at all. Glad I was helped. I don't remember exactly what your question is, but I'm glad I could help for sure. Would I go over the John F asked, can I go over the setup for the draw? Oh, absolutely. Okay. So the easiest, you know, there's all kinds of ways to do it, but here's how I do it. So what I like to do, let's actually, I'm going to use this, my little, a little putting thing here as my target. So hopefully you all can see that. So let's say that there is the target, okay? And I'm setting up to that, and I want to hit a draw. I'm right-handed. I want to hit a draw. Let's get where you can see me. Okay, so this ball, my ball is this little circle thing right here. So if I'm wanting to hit a draw, I need to angle that face in the direction where I want the ball to start. So if I'm hitting a draw, I want that ball to start to the right. So let's say that I want to hit a 5-yard draw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim that face about 5 yards right of the target. So it's really hard to probably see on camera, but I've got this face opened up a little bit. And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my stance angled away double that. So if I'm 5 yards to the right of the target to get that ball to curve to the right, I've got to hit this. I got to have my club path going in to out, double that. So what I want to do is I want to angle, I'm going to exaggerate this so it's easy to see on camera, but I want to angle my feet 10 yards right of the target. And then from there, I may put the ball just a little bit back in my swing to make it easier to swing from the inside. But from there, all I'm doing is I'm swinging down my toe line and swinging from the inside, and I'm getting this club face. Now it's going to be, the club face is going to be closed to my stance, but open to the target. And that's what's going to allow me to get this club to wrap around the ball and to hit some draws. So what I recommend doing, if you really want to learn how to move the ball and shape the ball and get really, really good at that, I would highly recommend going through our ball striking masterclass. You're going to learn to fade and draw the ball. And like I was saying before, you don't need an expensive, you don't need a $20-some thousand TrackMan to tell you all these things about your ball flight. Honestly, if you can learn and understand ball flight laws and understand what happens when you hit the ball on different parts of the club face, and if you can understand what happens with certain divots, when you see certain things with your divots, if you can understand that, you can really be able to understand exactly what you need to do to improve your impact. And that's what the Ball Striking Masterclass is all about. So we offer enrollment on this every month or two. So be on the lookout in your email for opportunities to enroll in that. I'm the lead instructor in the Facebook group. It includes access to a Facebook group where you can post your swings and ask me all kinds of questions. So I would highly recommend that for you if you're looking to learn how to control your ball flight a little bit better. All right. So J&D says, how much tension should there be in the backswing? So basically you want to have really as little tension as possible. But obviously as the forces, as the backswing, gets longer and longer and longer, and the speed gets, more, well, you have to put more force into the club. You have to, hold on to this club tighter as you do that. It's actually going to be the tightest as you're coming into impact and you're releasing that club. That's when you're going to feel the most pressure and the most force you need to put in the hands. So basically, the best way to think about it is to have as little tension as you possibly can, and to still be able to have good control of the club. So if you have very, very little tension in the hands, but you can feel like the club slipping out of your hands, or you're not controlling it, then you're not putting enough pressure, enough force into it. So, you've heard the baby bird, hold it like a baby bird. Well, that's okay. Excuse me. That's okay to address because, you're tension free and there's no forces going on. But as soon as you start the swing, you're going to have to grip it a little bit harder than a baby bird. And especially as the forces get higher and you're starting down and you're getting into impact, you should be crushing a bird with your lead hand, is the feeling that you want to have. Like you're trying to crush this grip as you're coming into impact. That's kind of the feeling that you want to have. And that's with your, you don't want to feel that with your trail hand, because if you're doing that with your trail hand, that means you're trying to push through. It's with this lead, with this lead hand. You should try to feel like if you're right-handed with that left hand, that you're trying to rip this grip right off the club. So you're putting a ton of force into their long drive guys. I mean, it's crazy the amount of forces that they're putting into the grip. So in order to swing that club hard, you have to put some forces into that grip. But that's as you're coming into impact, not throughout the backswing. So hopefully that helps. There's actually a great video on the website that I can refer you to. Just do a search on the website of grip pressure, and there'll be a video. It's a crazy detail video. It's one of those popular crazy detail videos that Clay does, where he goes over grip pressure throughout the entire swing with both hands. So that will give you a much fuller picture of what I'm talking about. All right, I need to get a drink here real quick. We'll go a little bit longer here. I'm not sure how many questions there are left. There's not. I can answer the rest of these. There's not very many left, so we'll go another 15 minutes here. So Stacy says, when moving the ball up in the stance to get upward angle of attack, my ball flight is now going left. I am right-handed. Okay, so that's a fairly common issue. So what's happening is as you're hitting up on the ball, right, you're continuing to move. That club face is continuing to rotate through. So that club face is getting a little bit more closed. So what I would recommend doing is, as you're coming into impact, feel like you're holding off the face a little bit. You're holding that face open and not rolling over as much. Feel like you're kind of holding that face open. Try to hit balls that start to the right. And, try hit some big slices or something like that and get used to that. And then at that point, all you have to do is kind of ease off of that. So overdo it a little bit, get that ball to start to the right, and then ease off of it to get that ball to square up. So right now you're rolling the hands over too much, and that face is getting closed when it's coming into impact because it's traveling further to the ball. Well, now, since you got to make an adjustment and feel like you're holding off that face, if you hit it off to the right, ease off of it, and to get that ball flight to straighten out. So hopefully that helps with you. All right, so Mike P says, do you encourage forward shaft lean with the putter or no forward shaft lean? I've heard two schools of thought on this. So you want to have a little bit of forward shaft lean. So the main reason is to have a stable impact. So if you are with the putter here, generally a good school of thought is to kind of have it pointed right up at your heart. So if you see here, that's not very much. It's maybe a couple degrees. If you have the shaft straight up and down, so if I try to get lined up with the camera so you can see so if I have the shaft straight up and down like this, it still kind of looks like I have lean. There we go. It's a little bit more lined up with the camera. If I have the shaft straight up and down like this, my impact's just not going to be as stable because I don't have the force leading the mass. So if you think about it, the way to think about that is, here's my force that I'm putting into the club, and that my mass that is down there, that's the club head. If I have the force right here leading the mass and I try to drag the club this way, it's just going to go in a straight line with that mass. Now, if I go the opposite, and this is probably, let's use something that's not going to be super smooth here, that I can be illustrated a little bit better. But if I have it like this, maybe a stick would be, if I turn it around, this would be better. So if I have it like this, and I have the force leading the mass, I'm trying to push this forward. Well, this is going to be all squirrely. It's not going to be as stable. So you kind of look at it as kind of like pushing something versus pulling something. If you pull something, it's going to want to align with that mass a little bit easier. So having a little bit of forward shaft lean is definitely going to help with that. And it's also going to help you to hit kind of up on it a little bit and get that little top spin roll going, or to not get it to where, because a lot of people, when they putt, they kind of do this a little bit. So if you're like this, you're straight up and down, and you add that in with it, you get a little bit of pop in there with it. Well, now you're adding loft to the face, and you're going to put backspin on your putts, and they're not going to roll very well. So we definitely don't want to be doing that. that's how you really struggle with putting if you do that. So if you have a little bit of forward shaft lean in there and you do this just a little bit, well, it's not gonna hurt you as much. It's still gonna get the ball to get a little bit of a top spin roll. I just recommend just having a little bit. So setting up, kind of have it pointed right at your heart. That's kind of a good place to have it. And your putter is also set up to have a little bit of forward shaft lean as well. At least the modern ones are. All right. So William F says, thank you. Q, you rock. Hey, Sean, you rock, man. Thanks for joining me. All right. So Rick G says, when do you turn the door knob on the backswing, and does it make a difference if you do it early in the backswing? So basically, when you want to turn the doorknob is in the transition. So that's turning the doorknob to the right. That's if I go turning the doorknob to the right. There we go. Now on camera, it's going to look opposite, but turning the doorknob to the right from my perspective is what you want to do in transition. So if you do that, let's say that I were to do that in the backswing and I was to do it early and I was to turn the doorknob to the right and I was like this. Well, in the downswing, what I'm going to want to do, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So Newton's laws. So what's going to happen is if I go like this in the backswing, I'm going to tend to want to do that. And that's the opposite. That's turning the doorknob to the left. So what you want to do is get the club going up and then turn the doorknob to the right to get this club to shallow out, square that club face early, turn into impact. All right. So Greg S., and this is the last question I'll answer. Not sure if there's anyone here, but this will be the last question I'll answer. So hopefully, Greg, you're still in here. So Greg asks, having trouble with picking up the club too early in the backswing and consequently not getting deep enough. My backswing, any thoughts on a correction? So yeah, there's actually a great video that Clay just came out with, the most recent one, the takeaway. I definitely recommend watching that. But basically what you want to think about is that let's back this up a little bit, that your club, your arms, your hands, your shoulders, it's all one piece to start the backswing. So if you're you're not getting your shoulders involved early enough, what's happening is you're probably just doing this. You're just lifting the club up. So what I would try to feel like just as you're starting the swing is that it's the shoulders. There's very little wrist set. The arms aren't really lifting up at all. It's all the shoulders starting that backswing. And that's going to get your shoulders involved sooner. It's going to be very, very powerful. You're going to get a much better and bigger turn if you can do that. So that's what I'd recommend doing, is just doing some swings where you're feeling like it's all one piece. Like this is all a triangle right here. And then you add the club in there, and that triangle stays as long as you can get it. Exaggerate it a little bit. That's completely fine. All you have to do is ease off of it if you exaggerate it too much. So get that going. Get those shoulders more involved, and that's going to allow you to get a much bigger turn and be able to get a lot more distance. So hopefully that helped you. We'll be back here again tomorrow. I believe tomorrow is Thursday, so tomorrow will be 3 o'clock. Eastern time. So hopefully I see you all there, and best of luck with your golf game in the meantime. Take care.